What's going on YouTube? It's Filthy and we're back with another video. Today we're going to take a look at a Sorceress starter guide for Ladder 2 Diablo 2 Resurrected, which of course has the Season of Sunder charms. It's going to be probably, I guess, a bit of a long video. You will have access to the slides, so if there are changes you wish to make yourself, you can simply make a copy of the document. Obviously, again, it's there for you to flick through at your leisure, because obviously it's a bit annoying to have to go and jump around videos back and forth. But this is basically a full written guide on how to beat Diablo. So yeah, then we're going to get into it. Now, I think this season is going to be a lot of fun. Sunder charms, I think, are going to offer a lot of power. Terror zones are great. We've had those in the game for a little bit. But today, as I say, starter guide, we're going to go from normal, starting level 1 with nothing, all the way up until hell, which is probably going to be around about level 80, 85, something around there. I'm personally probably planning to play at least up to about 90 on the Sorceress. I might make another couple of classes. This guide will also allow you to go from 0 to hero, from beta soy boy to alpha giga chick, because obviously the Sorceress is a chick. And we're going to go through a Frozen Orb Hydra build, which is what I'm going to recommend to play through Nightmare and pretty much Hell. This obviously is paired with the full video guide that we did a couple of days ago, so I will link that in the description. I'll try and put some timestamps for the various bits and bobs here, so Act 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in Normal, Nightmare and Hell. As I say, this document will be linked, and there will be some other goodies in the video description. And as always guys, a like brightens my day. First run through out of Diablo 2, one of these, so any feedback is of course welcome. Right, what is new for Ladder 2 and patch 2.5? Well, in terms of the ladder, the biggest thing that we're going to get is access to Sunder charms. So these are going to be hard to find, and they're going to have different elements on them. What they're going to do is they're going to remove the immunity from the monsters. So fire, lightning, cold, physical, poison, magic, etc, etc. They will only drop from terror zones, and they will only drop on hell difficulty. So you won't find any until you've beaten Baal on hell difficulty. I think from the Sorceress's perspective, the Blizzard source will dominate, simply because the cold mastery will completely just wipe resistance off enemies, and Blizzard, with it having a really huge AoE, will be just the best build. It's probably going to be the best build for Sorceress. It might well be the best build in the game, certainly from a casual perspective. Until you do get your Sunder charm and you can therefore wipe off cold immunity, you're going to run a dual element build, or at least that's what I would do. I think it's very powerful, and it saves you basically from total boredom, because otherwise when you beat Hell, if you just do Lightning Sorceress without Sunder charm, if you just do a Cold Sorceress without Sunder charm, it gets very boring. Well, personally I find it very boring to just farm the same couple of areas over and over again, and with the terror zones, the dual element I think offers a lot of flexibility. As I say, we covered this in the guide a couple of days ago. Now, Sunder charms do actually come with a pretty big negative resist on them. I think it can go as high as 90%, but it can be pretty nasty, so you're going to have to counteract this, otherwise you're going to get squashed. So you have to be a bit more careful when you get to Hell with your resistances. Here are a couple of examples of Sunder charms. So it will just be a Grand Charm in kind of legendary format, like a Geeds. And it's going to basically just say that the immunity is sundered, and it's going to give you a pretty hefty penalty to whatever element it is that you're running. They do run on a range, so you can get a really good one with obviously the lower negative resist, and you can get one that's going to really hurt you with pretty big negative resist. But I guess we need to start in normal, because that is where the game loads up. So normal, we're going to concentrate the Sorceress on a few things. We're going to make a Leaf Staff, which is going to give us +2 to fire skills, as well as some other bonuses. We're going to make a Stealth Armor for some faster hit recovery and I think faster cast rate. We're going to put 25 points into Strength just to equip a belt, so we can have potions so that we can survive our way through normal. I've put then Strength up to 45 because I like having the belts with the 4 open potion slots and access to more armors that I can wear. That's totally up to you, that part, but at least 25 Strength I think is what you're aiming for. Stats that you're looking for through normal are going to be faster cast rate, faster hit recovery, resistances, they're all good. Faster cast rate, I think you want to tap out at about 63%. That's a fairly easy breakpoint to hit. I wouldn't personally worry about magic find at all through normal. I wouldn't throw the pieces away, because when you get to Nightmare I would start on magic find, but to beat normal I wouldn't necessarily worry too much about having magic find equipped. I don't think there's terribly much in normal that is worth getting. You can get lucky, there are a few things that can drop, but it's not something I worry about. Just get normal beat, and then we'll work on magic find after that. I'm going to recommend that we start off in normal with a pure fire build, and this is to save a respec. So we're going to be building into Firebolt's Fireball because they synergize with the Hydra, and saving a respec is going to be very handy, I think, for this ladder, because we don't know what Sunder Charm we're going to find. More on that a little bit later. So we start off in Act 1 normal. I'm referencing a Diablo 2 XP chart here when I've got levels that you want to stay at. This is basically the highest level you can go to until the XP drops off. So stay in Act 1 until level 12, because at level 13 you actually get more XP in Act 2 than in Act 1. So that's kind of where those figures go. I will link that document if you want it. I use it quite a lot. I think it's quite helpful. What we're looking for in Act 1 normal as we beat it are a couple of helmets with 2 open sockets. So we're going to use one to shove in rubies or sapphires for either health or mana. And we're obviously looking for another one just for spare, so that we can make our lore helm later. You might also want one for your mercenary as well, so bear that in mind. We're going to look for 2 open sockets grey or white armour, and that is so that we can make a stealth. So we need one of those at some point. We need a nice belt for potions, which will help us survive. And as I say, skills wise, we're pretty much concentrating on Firebolt to start off with. We do want a point in static, because the ability to chunk off monster health is very important. And then warmth, you may as well put a point into this, because the mana regen is just very, very helpful early on. In Act 1, the quests we've got are the Den of Evil. This is the first quest. We get skill points, which is pretty nice. We then have to go and kill the Blood Raven, which allows us to hire a follower, companion, mercenary, however you want to call it. Obviously we get the chick with the bow to start off, which she can be helpful. Chances are she's going to die a lot in Act 1 without having decent gear. Whether you want to res her or not, that's up to you. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Next quest is Rescue Kane. This is an important one. This allows us to identify all of our items, which is great. Saves us having to ID scroll everything. Then we move on and kill the Countess, which allows access to rune drops, which is very nice. Then move on and do the Hammer Imbue quest. So you can save this or you can use it. I tend to use it on something like boots, belt or gloves, just to see if I can maybe hit some resistances, something like that. So, you know, you can use it normal, there's nothing wrong with using it. I think if you're going to play the game a long time, you probably want to save it until you get to Hell and start finding your super nice tiaras, coronas, and headwear, basically, because you might get really lucky and get an absolutely baller one. Last quest is going to be Andariel. She's very weak to fire damage, so that shouldn't be too much of a problem. And they're the quests. Now, as I say, you kind of want to be at the end of level 12 before moving on to Act 2. Your skills up to level 12 should look something like this. We're going to put 1 point into Static, which is on the left hand of the lightning spell tree. We're going to put 1 point into Telekinesis. This is just a prerequisite for teleport later on, so it doesn't really do much for us. I tend not to use it. You can use it if you want, but I tend not to. And then we've pretty much put the 1 point into Warmth, put a bunch of points into our Firebolt. We've got a +1 because obviously you start off with a +1 staff to Fireballs, and then at 12 you unlock Fireball. Fireball's got a really nice AoE, much better than Firebolt, so you pretty much swap onto using that at that point. In terms of farming, if you are in Act 1 and you're looking to overlevel yourself, Tristram runs are great for XP because there's generally quite a few elites and champions and stuff in there, so it's pretty good for XP. Personally, I do the Countess. I will run runes because we're looking for Tyr and Rel to make our leaf staff. Obviously we need a base for that, so a white 2 open socket, short, long staff, something like that. And we're also looking for Tal and Eth so we can make our stealth armour. Again, I think Leaf is level 19 and Stealth is level 17. We're going to move on to Act 2, obviously once we beat Act 1 and we get to say level 13, or around about there. and then we can stay here till about level 19 or 20. Now don't get me wrong, you don't have to stick to these levels, this is just where the XP drop off is, and on a solo playthrough of the game I'm quite a big advocate for over leveling, just because the extra vitality, the extra mana that you get with your levels, the extra damage you get on your skill points, I think just makes the game an easier and more fun playthrough. But if you want to balls to the wall and go for it as soon as you can, then that's absolutely fine, up to you. But this is I say personally, is my strategy. In Act 2 I tend to swap over to the Mercenary, so you can get an aura for prayer, which is healing. I don't think they do the Holy Freeze one in Act 1 normal, they might do, so you can go for that one as well if you want. Lightning resist is pretty important in Act 2 normal, very easy for me to put this on the spreadsheet here, or the document. Not the easiest thing to necessarily get some lightning resist, maybe you got lucky with your Chassis Imbue quest, but the beetles will hit pretty hard. They're great to kill, they're worth a lot of XP, but you need to be able to survive a lot of the lightning blasts, so you know, I would look out for some lightning resist if you can. Fireball is going to be the skill that we're going to be pumping up, again just looking to build up that fire damage. In terms of quests for Act 2, we've got the Radamant one, again we get skill book points in this, so again really handy to get this done ASAP, get a bit more damage. We have to get the cube from the Halls of the Dead, again nice because it offers some access to recipes, offers us some extra storage space on our character because we carry the cube with us, obviously we can put things in it. We have to find the Herodric Staff in the Maggot's Lair. We have to find the Amulet in the Claw Viper Temple, which will complete the Block Out Sun quest for us. And then we've just got two monsters to kill really, kill the Summoner and kill Duriel. I haven't popped on here, but just in case you don't know, you can open up your quest inventory and it'll tell you which Tal Rashid tomb Duriel is in. And that will save you a bunch of time exploring all of them. But yeah, hopefully these things shouldn't be too much of a problem with a character approaching level 20. Up to 20, the skill's going to look like this. We will of course have our Leaf Staff at level 19, and we will have our Stealth Armor on because we're level 17. And pretty much we're pumping up Fireball, and we now do also have Teleport, which opens up at 18. And this makes the playthrough a lot easier. Being able to get yourself out of a jam is fantastic. Being able to just teleport through walls, over rivers, so on and so forth is very, very useful. So from the lightning tree, all we've added here is 1 point to teleport, which is just underneath the telekinesis. And other than that, we've put all of our points into Fireball. So the rest of the fire damage that we've got is just basically from the Leaf Staff. In terms of your Leaf Staff base, if you can get something that does have plus to Fireball, that would be handy. Other than that, you could maybe go for plus to static, which would make your static radius a little bigger, but you don't need to worry too much about the base. I don't think you need anything past just the 2 runes in it. In terms of farming in Act 2, if you're not quite at your level 19-20 cap, just running the Tal Rashid's tombs, just even the area before you enter any of the tombs is great for XP. Or you could go for the Arcane Sanctuary. The advantage of this is you've got lots of ghosts, and they are really good at dropping runes, gems, and you've got a lot of super chests in that kind of Arcane Sanctuary tile set as well. So I'd probably pick one of those two things, depending on which you fancy, which you find easiest. I think the Arcane Sanctuary does have a fair, well, later on it does have fire immunes. You shouldn't run into too many immunities on normal, but yeah, you can choose that or the tombs really. And then we move on to Act 3 normal. I look to stay here again till about 25 based on the XP. Fire resist is going to be much more important here because the shamans, the guys who resurrect those little dark blowing bastards, will try and hit you with fire. They'll breathe fire on you all the time. You also have got the Travancore and the Hydras to battle, so Ral runes in a spare 2-socket helmet. If you've got any spare Ral runes, will give you a nice big fire resist, so do consider it. It might make your playthrough a little bit easier. And once we get to Act 3 and level 25, I'm starting to think about saving some points for level 30, because at level 30 Frozen Orb is going to open up, Cold Mastery is going to open up, Hydra, and also Fire Mastery, so we don't necessarily want to pump all the points into the character. In terms of quests, the Golden Bird is the first one. You just have to hang around at the start and kill the first champ pack you come into. They should drop the Golden Bird. Just do all the steps and then remake the game to get your instant plus 20 life. In Act 1, normal, 20 life makes a big difference, so do get this done ASAP. You've then got to find the Gibden, and you've also then got to basically put Khalim's flail together, so Heart, Iron Brain, respectively, in the Spider Cavern, Flare Dungeon, and the sewers under the Bazaar. Once you've got those, the next quest is optional, but again I would do it, which is the Lamesson's Tome. This is in the Ruined Temple in the Kurust Bazaar. This gives you essentially a level's worth of stats, so we're going to pump them into Vitality. Strength, obviously, as I say, is 25. I'm not putting any points into Energy as we go. They are all going into Vitality. And once we've made the Khalim's Flail, once we've killed the council members, once we've killed all those nasty things guarding the entrance to the temple, we will then go in and find Mephisto and kill him. And if you do get up to level 30 by the time you kill Mephisto, the Hydras will make short work of him. Skills up till 25 look like this. Again, we are trying to save some points until we get to 30, which will be in a few slides time. You can use a respec, so this is how we've got the skills set up. Again, we just put a little bit more into Fireball, and then the rest I've actually saved at this point. You can go all in on Fireball if you want. You will then possibly have to respec again later, because it'll be harder to build up your Frozen Orb and your Hydra, because you'll have used more points on Fireball. But that's up to you. I would recommend trying to save the respecs, because you don't know what Sunder Charm you're going to find. But that's kind of up to you. In terms of farming, Act 3, I don't really think it's a great place to farm in normal. I don't think it's a great place to farm in general, unless you can do Trav runs, or Mephisto particularly efficiently. But Lower Kurast is worth a go if you need just a bit more XP before moving on to Act 4, because you do have the super chests that are located by the campfire. So the hut to the west and also to the north of the campfire should have super chests. You might get something lucky out of them. But other than that, you can just simply move on to Act 4 if you want to. Act 4, we're going to stay here till about level 32, and we're going to start to build out Frozen Orb. We're also going to start to build out Hydra, which is pretty good. Pretty short act. We've only got the 3 quests, so kill Israel, and this is going to again grant us a skill point, which is nice. Again, pretty important to do this super early. We have to smash the Soul Stone even. This will give us a rune. Fingers crossed you get something lucky out of this. And then we go and kill Diablo, and that is the base game beaten, and it would be on to the expansion. So up to level 32, this is really, I think, when we start to get going with the Orb and Hydra build, because we now have to build down the left-hand side of the cold tree to pop the points in to get to cold, to Frozen Orb. So we've got to go all the way down the left-hand side. We're then going to put 1 point into Cold Mastery. You only need 1 to start off with to get the negative res going, and subsequent points for cold damage you're going to go into Frozen Orb until that is maxed out. And then similarly on the right hand side here, we've got the fire spells we have to unlock and chant for the Hydra, and we're going to basically do as many Hydra points as possible with 1 in Fire Mastery just to get the initial bonus. So again, moving forward from this point, we're going to kind of alternate points between Frozen Orb and Hydra. How you spend future points is up to you. It will depend on whether you find anything with plus fire skills, plus cold skills. It will depend on whether you find yourself relying more on Hydra, or whether you prefer to use Frozen Orb for damage. So again, that's kind of a little bit of an individual thing. Long term wise, you obviously want to max Frozen Orb, max Hydra, and then you're looking to get your cold resist up to about 130 negative, so enough in Cold Mastery to get to 135% negative. In terms of farming in Act 4, you can run the Chaos Sanctuary over and over again if you want to get a bit more XP. Again, it depends how strong your character is. River of Flame is also a decent area maybe if you're a little bit weaker. And then you want to just make sure you're stocked up on potions before you move to Act 5, because they cost double when you first get there. Act 5 normal, you can stay here until level 37, and we're just going to continue to build out Frozen Orb and continue to build out Hydra, as I say, adding points to whichever one you fancy. In terms of the quests, we've got to go kill Shank the Overseer. This grants us the Socket quest reward. We're going to save that until we've beaten Act 5. We have to save the Barbs, so we go and rescue them. We get the Ral, Ort and Tal runes for free. We're going to use those to make an Ancient Pledge shield. We have to rescue Anya. This is great, 10% resist boost once we've freed her. And then we have to go and kill Nilthak. We get the personalization, not a great reward. I think we actually get a ring on a couple of these quests. Maybe we get a weapon for this one as well. So a couple of little extra juicy goodies. And then we have to kill the Ancients, which is worth a lot of XP and usually will increase you 1 level. Again, there's some argument is you've got to get here by a set level to get the maximum bonus. I just forget all that. I just want to make my playthrough as easy as possible, really. And then we have to kill Baal, and that is the game beat on normal. So up to 37, I'm just giving a quick example of what my skills would probably look like. As I say again, it depends what we're doing in terms of items we've found, how I'm feeling in terms of Frozen Orb versus Hydra damage. But it's just building up those 2 skills. I'm not going to flash up any more skill screenshots because, as I say, it's kind of gear dependent on what you find and suiting you, whether you like cold, whether you like fire better. In terms of farming, once you've beaten the game in normal, it's definitely the cows. You want to be doing normal cows. And this is basically just a shopping list that we've got here until we get to Nightmare. So you definitely want to find yourself a crystal sword. Obviously it has to be white or grey because we're going to take that to Larzik. We're going to go for a socket quest on that. That's going to give us 4 open sockets, and that will allow us to make a spirit sword, which is going to be super powerful, +2 to all skills, plus faster cast rate, plus mana, some other good stuff. We're also going to hope that the cow's going to drop us some missing runes. So for moving into Nightmare, we're going to look for Ort and Sol together because we're going to make a Lore helm. That's going to give us lightning resist and +1 to all skills. Again, anything with plus to all skills is going to be very helpful because it buffs up both Frozen Orb and Hydra. And then we're looking for the runes for the spirit. So Tal, Thul, Ort and Am make a spirit, and they will go in the crystal sword as soon as we have it, and as soon as we have those runes. We do also need to work on improving our resistances, because once we get to Nightmare, we're going to have a negative resistance penalty. So obviously the higher our resists, the better. We're also going to keep an eye out for 4 open socket weapon for the follower, because we're going to put Insight in, which is Ral, Tyr, Tal and Sol. Very handy. This will give us a meditation aura and sort pretty much most of our mana problems. Now I've put all this shopping list on cows. Obviously you're looking for all of this stuff on your playthrough in normal, but cows is going to be, I think, basically where you finish off getting these things. You can move to Nightmare without these things for sure, but all of them will make it much easier. I mean, for instance, I wouldn't be moving to Nightmare until I had my Spirit Sword, and then, as I say, Ancient's Pledge with the resistances, with the runes that we got from the Rescue Barb is going to go in my offhand. Spirit Shield's going to go in my main hand, and then the rest of it, hopefully speaking, will sort itself out. Now, in terms of starting Nightmare, don't worry, I'm not going to go through all the quests again. If you want to go back and look at the quests, they obviously don't change per difficulty. But just in general, what we're trying to do here is we're going to build up Frozen Orb and Hydra. We're going to be relying on our Lore Helm, Ancient's Pledge, to Ral or to Tal. We're still going to carry our Stealth unless we find a better chest plate, but it's probably unlikely. We're going to have our Spirit Sword. We're going to have increased resistances from boots, rings, amulets, gloves, whatever. And now, once we get to Nightmare, that's when I'm going to start working on Magic Find. So the Lore Helm, which gives +1 to all skills, we'll probably keep throughout Nightmare. But if we do get the chance to maybe go for a 2 socket, I'm not sure if you can get triple socket helms in Nightmare, but that is a good place to start on Magic Find if you do feel like you can drop the lightning res and the extra skill. But yeah, Nightmare, you can start to find some good items. In terms of progression, these are the XP limits for the various acts. So at level 43, it starts to become more beneficial to be in Act 2. At level 49, it starts to be more beneficial to be in Act 3. Again, you can stay a little bit past these, but the XP drop-off means that you probably should be moving on. And obviously you can go back, look at the slides for where to farm in Act 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Doesn't really change from normal to Nightmare to Hell, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, this is kind of how you're going to go through it. Level XP drops off after these, so you are punished, I think, for staying past these. You can move on a little bit early if you wish to crack through things. Again, I'm a big fan of over-leveling just to make the game a little bit easier. One thing to bear in mind in Nightmare is we of course start running into a lot more immune monsters. So the dual element of the build really starts to shine here, because if you come up across cold immune, well, you can Hydra it. If you come across fire immune, you can frozen orbit. If you come across both of those immunities, well, your mercenary has to be able to take things down, or you have to skip. But I just think it's a much smoother playthrough than going for one damage type and then having to either skip a lot more or rely on lower resist charges. Ideally, the mindset for Nightmare is probably to get to Hell sooner rather than later, because again, you're opening up your loot pool for better drops. Nightmare you can farm. I know a lot of people do tons of Nightmare farming before moving to Hell because they're looking for better gear. I tend not to bother. I tend to just move on once I'm at the requisite kind of level XP wise, because most of the things, like we talked about this in the Frozen Orb Hydra guide, there are plenty of craftable rune words that will get you to Hell, which you can even beat Hell with. So I don't necessarily think you need to spend too much time in Nightmare. But if you do want to, Nightmare on Dariel is obviously very weak to fire, good place to farm. You can do Bale, you can do Countess, you can even do the Frigid Highlands in Act 5, so Shank and also Eldritch, you can do that run even in Nightmare if you want. These are all good farm spots for you. And as I say, particularly once you're getting towards the end of Nightmare, you really want to be starting to focus on Magic Find, just in case you want to go back and do any of these farming spots, and also Magic Find into Hell is going to be quite as important. And yeah, starting Hell, this is hard, guys. This is a really hard jump. It's a bit of a shock sometimes. When I get to Hell, again, the quests are all the same, but what I'm looking for really as the first thing to get is a white Monarch shield. I'm going to go to the Mausoleum in Act 1, that is Burial Grounds, so by the Blood Raven, and I'm just going to farm there repeatedly until I get a white Monarch shield. And you got two choices with this. Choice number one is you take it to Larzik and you use your second socket quest. So you'll have 3 socket quests on what per character, if you're assuming you beat the game through. You can use your second one to do a spirit shield, so exact same rune combination as the sword. Or you can just simply keep farming Monarch shields and hope the game drops you a 4 open socket one. And I guess the other option is to use a cube recipe to add sockets, but that only gives a 50-50 probability of adding the 4 that you need. So I tend to, on my first playthrough of the season, first playthrough of the ladder, will use the socket quest because I just want to get my spirit on my offhand up and running, and I'll play 2 or 3 characters across the season, so I know I'll have some spare socket quests. If you're just going to play a Sorc, I'd probably save it because you might want to use it for something better later. And then in Hell, if you can squeeze it in, getting a Magic Find helmet, so just a mask, something like that with 3 sockets with 3 perfect topaz in. Obviously you're going to have to convert those into cube using the flawless 3 topaz to make 1 perfect topaz. This will give you a huge amount of Magic Find. It's really, really beneficial in Hell because, as I say, we start dropping all sorts of goodies, and Magic Find is just going to be very, very handy. A balance, because obviously you don't want to be too squishy, you're going to need resistances, but that's where the smoke chest comes in. So Neff and Lum together will give us a 50 all res, so we're looking for a chest plate with those 2 in. Lum is a hard rune to find, you're not going to have it at the start of Hell probably, but you can combine 3 Io runes and a flawed topaz in the cube, and that'll make a Lum, and 3 Io runes. You've got a good chance of having those by the end of Nightmare, I'd say. Again, particularly as we are going to be over leveled, we've maybe spent some time doing cows, we've maybe spent some time doing Countess runs. So just bear in mind, Io runes are going to be quite helpful for you. As we progress through Hell, you can stay in Act 1 Hell until about 74, and that's absolutely fine to be over leveled to move to Act 2, which you can then stay till 80. Act 3 till 84 and so on. Realistically, probably once I get to about 80, I'm then just going to try and play through the game. I will overlevel a little bit in Act 1, do some magic finding in maybe the Mausoleum, maybe a bunch of Act 1 Hell Countess runs could be very beneficial at the start of Ladder, looking for runes, looking for items that maybe we can trade if we want. But yeah, they are the XP things. You can check out the rest of the XP charts if you want. Now, the reason I'm going to try and move on from about 80 to really try and blast through the game is because I want to get it beat, because we want to unlock terror zones, because we can then farm more XP in more areas we can get more items. And I've just put Sund there. That should read Sunder Charms. We need to beat we need to beat the game to get the Terror Zones, and Sunder Charms can only drop inside those Terror Zones. So it is going to be important to beat it. So maybe at 75 I'll try and crack through it, but I do find that you do need some gear, you do need some items, because Hell is difficult. Act 3 in particular, I always find Hell first playthrough Act 3 is really hard. So don't worry about it. A good strategy if you do get stuck is to just make a public game, ask for some help, ask for somebody in a lobby to come with you, and hopefully speaking to somebody can get you through. Travancore is particularly difficult. Doing the Lan Essem's Tome is particularly difficult in Hell, because you can just get some nasty mobs that will absolutely blast you. And that will be it. Yeah, you look to beat Hell. Now, in terms of respecs, I'm going to do my first one once I've got my Spirit Shield, because you're going to need 156 strength to wear the Monarch Spirit. And at that point, I'm then going to respec my skills so that I'm maxing Hydra, Frozen Orb, and then looking for synergies. So that would be slightly more beneficial because we maybe don't have quite all the points allocated earlier that we did. And we're going to then take another respec once we've beaten the game, once we find our first Sunder Charm, because the negative sundering of resist is just going to be so powerful. So if I find a fire one, I'm going to build a Fire Hydra Sorceress first. If I find a lightning one, I'm going to build a Nova Energy Shield, and I've put in gold Blizzard, third and final respec. So fingers crossed you find a cold Sunder Charm first. You're going to make a Blizzard Sorc. It should hopefully wipe the floor with pretty much anything, which I'm really looking forward to testing on the season. If you find a magic one, if you find a poison one or a physical one, you might want to try and trade that for something. It's probably going to be very powerful and worth an awful lot early on. But yeah, you're just going to have to try your best. In terms of farming, Hell Countess is good to farm. Even if you haven't beaten the game, you can get Hell Runes, and there's generally some good items in there. You can get higher runes, good items. Terror Zones, of course, requires beating the full game. Frigid Highlands is a great spot. Obviously, you have to get to Act 5 to do Shenk and Eldritch. Travancore is a good place to farm, but it's really hard, really risky. You're going to die and lose a lot of XP doing it. So obviously that depends on how good your character is. Again, Blizzard Sorc I think can do that quite well. Lower Chorus I've put there as a decent spot, so if I'm struggling a little bit and I need to build up some XP, I need to build up some extra levels to progress through Hell. Lower Chorus, we don't know where the campfire is, it's going to be random on each map, but we do have the 2 super chests, which if you do find them, they give you your best chance of high runes in the game. It's not an efficient strategy, I think, long term to be going to Lower Chorus, teleporting around looking for the fireplace, for the campfire, but certainly as you build up some XP and clear the level, you can certainly look for it, and fingers crossed you get some good runes. Chaos Sanctuary obviously is a great place to farm if your character can cope with it, and the same with Bale and Bale runs. Once your character starts getting geared out, you will be able to do them. So initially you're just looking to make a bridgehead into making a character, and then as you improve it over and over in time and it gets stronger and faster and better, you're then going to go on to the later end game farming routes. In terms of the Orb Hydra, the full build guide that I did is linked in the description. I like it because it clears all of the Terror Zones. The Orb has a slow to it, which is great, stops incoming damage, and the Hydras can DPS, so you can pop them down, teleport behind a wall, behind a barricade. They'll still attack stuff. Perfect chicken shit way to play the game. Really does take the deaths and reduce them down, which is great. But ultimately we want a Sunder Charm build, but we have to find them first, so that's why we use the Orb and Hydra. Right, anybody who has stayed this long is a true champion. Thank you very much. The links are in the description, the D2 XP chart, the slides themselves if you wish to amend, edit or make any notes, and I'll link the Hydra Orb build guide for you. So that's it, thank you very much. Any feedback is welcome. Do we need more screenshots of gear? Do we need more screenshots of skills? Do we need some more gameplay? Is it too dry for me just simply to talk for 35 minutes over a set of slides? Like, subscribe, and as always, any donations to the channel via super thanks are greatly appreciated and do keep this thing going. I hope you're excited for the launch of Ladder 2. I hope this has been a useful guide. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take it easy. Peace.